All right, so with our handsome Mr. A, he's actually got a delicious hoof that he's working on right now, but I wanted to work on a little bit with some loose leash walking while also incorporating a little bit with like a front or a side position, and then also see if we can practice a little bit with like leash pressure. So I know for a lot of babes, loose leash walking is challenging. Remember that when you're first starting off with your gorgeous guy or gal, that you want to think about breaking down loose leash walking, and it's a tongue twister, into several little steps. So I'd always recommend, if you can control the environment in which you're practicing, which means you pick a bubble in which your puppy's going to be successful, the distraction level will be kind of low, and your puppy will feel sort of comfortable and familiar with that environment. So some of my favorite places to start off in for loose leash walking would be typically inside your home, in and around your yard, or sort of little tidbits of your neighborhood. So if your babe is struggling with overexcitement or over-arousal or even sometimes frustration or anxiety, we want to be careful that where we're practicing doesn't set up our dogs to rehearse getting better at those skills. So if your walk in the beginning consists of Mr. A doing a lot of pulling or, jostling you back and forth, what I would recommend is to first warm him up in and around your yard and then do a little adventure into parts of that walk. If you're trying to teach loose leash walking, which they don't know how to do, and then on top of it, you're then including lots of novelty and going through one more little environment to another, remember that your dog sees his whole world through his sense of smell. So if that means, for example, he is bombarded with all of these great new smells, he might have a much harder time honing in on you or the task at hand. So obviously Mr. Handsome right now is enjoying his hoof for a moment while I'm blabbing. But after I discuss a little bit of some of these topics, then we're going to go into working it in, again, the classroom setting. But then I'd recommend to take these steps and practice in and around your home and that sort of zone for starters. When I normally bring home a dog for the first time, with my guys, I would end up working them in and around the home for the first month or two, depending on their comfort range, build up some of the foundation skills I was hoping to acquire, and then start to generalize those skills with different criteria. So in the beginning, I'd recommend keep yourselves looking the way you are when you're training, so your puppy has an easier time transitioning the same skills to different venues. If it's always one new thing on top of another new thing, that might create the reason behind the disconnect or the inability to work a certain skill, be it loose leash walking, maybe coming when called, or even, for example, again, responding to a sit or something simple that he might understand typically. So with Mr. A, I know he's a little distracted with his chew, and I know we discussed a little bit with the disengage and sort of being able to move away from an item without creating a lot of conflict. Because remember, we sometimes tend to be the end of the game. So with Mr. A, ready, sir? I'm going to do a couple little find-its for the handsome guy. Just have it be kind of fun to go and explore and get those items. I'll, of course, let him go back to his hoof in a little bit so he can enjoy it for later while it's his turn to rest. Ready? So right here, I'm going to do, again, a couple little find-its. Just, again, I'm doing a little bit with also the treat and retreat, which is where you would have your puppy enjoying a snack. Nice job, sir. And while they're enjoying it, you don't instantly go and swipe it or exchange right there. You make it where when you're approaching, you're tossing a few snacks and then you move away again. So it can help your puppy start to realize that when you come near, it doesn't always equal the end of the game. So again, I'm just retopping his ice cream as he's enjoying it. But eventually, if we have to go ahead and do something else, this is where this game can be helpful. Ready? Allston. We'll go into a nice little big find it right there. And now I can nonchalantly take my item away and plop it off to the side. So he can play with that bad boy in a few moments. So if, again, when you're practicing loose leash walking, you're having a hard time dealing with your treats, your leash, your puppy all at the same time, you don't feel like you have enough arms, I'd recommend to start in the home and maybe off gear, and then build in also with the leash. So to warm up, we might go right into some of those beautiful find-its like he did last time. Nice job. So right here, as he comes into my space, I might feed him for that moving into my bubble. Nice. If he offers any great skills that you'd like to have happen again, don't forget to reinforce them. So remember how we mentioned that every skill or behavior or cue has a bank account. And we want to see how many deposits have you been, again, depositing into a certain account to make that become much more of a readily available skill. Ready? Find it. So he's been really loving, obviously, coming. He's been playing really nicely with a lot of his friends. So we end up doing typically in the morning is kind of get in the groove. I know they're really all excited this morning, so you got to hear a lot of woo-woos when you first came in. But then they get into a nice little groove in their little zones. We mingle through some playtime, we do potty breaks, and then we start getting situated for the puppies that are here for day school to work a few skills, and then we rotate through the day school students, and we rotate through the play as well for all. So ready? Find it. Nice job. So let's say we're going to work a little bit with loose leash walking. If you're going to first start off, like I mentioned, off gear, you may want to pick a side, so left or right, or in the beginning, if your puppy is really struggling, or you might be as well, is feed for any time they're by your side. So I might show Mr. Hanson what I have, so I haven't given it to him. I'm going to go ahead and hold it near the side of my body. We're going to take a few steps together and I'm going to feed for that. So you want to make sure that your rate of reinforcement is high enough to make your puppy seem interested in you for bigger chunks of time, because there's little snacks being given throughout that stretch of practice. Chewing is optional. Oh my goodness, you got it okay? Oh, there it is. Beautiful. Lovely. Sometimes walking, chewing, and or breathing at the same time can be challenging. So again, we're going to go right to his little sniffer, get his attention. In the beginning, I am luring the puppy, so using the food to coax the behavior. Eventually, you want to fade out the lure as quickly as you can. So, but for right now, I'm using my hand as a visual target for him to hone in on my hand while we're doing loose leash walking. So I'd go to his little sniffer, get his attention. View your hand as also like a gas pedal. So what I mean by that is if your hand is down and low and in front, it's going to accelerate the puppy's movement. If your hand starts to go up a little higher and maybe closer to you, it might slow them down. So if sometimes you have moments where he's trying to eat your hands, I'd recommend show him the food, bring it up to your sort of hip area, and then move around for a few steps and then lower to feed. If he's got a little bit of excitement and he's going into zoomies or he's being a little bit of a wild monkey, you could always go right into a little find it to help him disengage from you. And like, let's say he was getting way too excited, I go find it and help him take a little break from whatever we're working. So because for puppies, if they're getting a little too overstimulated or they're overtired, that's when a lot of times they start to become more mouthy or more rambunctious. So you can see for Mr. Hanson, he's kind of honing in on my hand right now, and I'm feeding throughout these moments when he's by the side of my body. If you are at times, he's like, oh, exhausted. If you are at times feeding him, be careful as to where you're doing it. So what I mean by that is if for right now you're working on loose leash walking next to your right or next to your left side, make sure you're feeding them while they're on the side. If you're feeding by mistake as they come in front of you, which is where most of their skills have been learned thus far, he might think that cutting you off might be the right place to be. He's like, and I'm winded. You can take a little break. So I'm going to grab his leash and we're going to try a little bit with some of this practice where he's going to be working a little bit with some of this loose leash walking while on gear as well. So if, let's say, he's like, let's just wrestle. Oh my gosh, wild monkey. So, but if, let's say, clasping on the gear gets him a little excited, I would recommend to sometimes hold gear and then practice a few other skills while you're holding it. So if he were getting way too excited and was trying to mouth the equipment or jump and mouth me while I'm holding the gear, nice itch. That would be a moment where I would go and help him choose a different skill versus me getting agitated or overwhelmed as your puppy would sometimes be mouthing you or getting a little bit too rowdy. So right here, I do also recommend, I know we mentioned this a little bit in some of the other clips. Ready? I'm going to do a little find it for the handsome guy. Is if he's going to work on your right or the left, whichever one is fine, I would recommend, ready? Allston, yes, nice job, is to practice getting in the habit of holding your leash on the opposite side of whichever side your puppy's on. So if he's going to be working on the right side of me for now, and we'll switch so you can see both, is I have my hand is holding the leash handle through my thumb, and I close it around my hand so I can, if I need to, let go so I don't injure myself. And then in the moment where he's next to me, I'm going to use, again, my right hand to keep his interest on my right side. If you'd prefer to swap, you can easily do the same thing. And so now, if he's going to be on my left side, my leash would be in my right hand, and I would feed from my left side. So you can do either or. If your puppy is also taking snacks a bit hard, that is also sort of a barometer to their comfort range or how they might be feeling. So what I mean by that is a lot of puppies will, if they get really jazzed or a little nervous or overly exuberant, they will sometimes have a harder mouth, which means they take the food harder than they would if they weren't quite as excited or flustered. So it can be a great little window into maybe how your puppy could be feeling for the time frame. So right now, Mr. A is just meandering with me. My leash is nice and relaxed, so I like to have my leash not have constant tension. So if you tend to be one that wraps the leash around your hand or your wrist, I don't recommend it. You could get really hurt. But it also means that your puppy is only next to you because you're physically restraining them with the leash and their equipment. So you want to think about your gear as training wheels. It doesn't teach you how to ride your bicycle, but it does help you learn as long as someone's also informing you on how to steer, pedal, and stop. So if you never get that information, even though you might be with tricycle wheels, with the training wheels thrown on there, you may still have a really rough time learning and fall. So for Mr. Handsome, if you're looking to gear to change behavior or to fix the problem, it normally won't, because you'll always need one more piece or a different piece or another piece on top of that one, because you never actually taught the how-to skills. You're just correcting the response that comes from him not understanding. So if, let's say we were working on, one of my favorites is sometimes having your puppy work a front. So front, again, is where you could get your puppy. I normally recommend start them off, and I'm just going to set him off over here so you can see a little bit better, is let's say we're going to do a front. And fronts in the beginning, I like to set them up in front of me and then bring them into my space that way. As he gets more comfortable, then we'll do fronts from when he's on the side of my body as well. He's like, lady, I'm winded. So he was doing some nice wrestling earlier with Miss T as well. So for front, I'm going to lure him into my front and feed for that. And again, front and feed for that. Eventually, your fronts could turn into a sitting position. He's like, yes, ma'am, with some great eyes on you and some like nice little check-ins. For right now, though, I'm not being stingy on his first starts on how to start off a new skill. I want him to think there's value in just giving it a try. So again, front, and we feed for that. Front, beautiful. So now let's say I had my beautiful boy next to me, and I want to go from walking, oh dear, I see something, front, and now the puppy is in front of my body. You will want to make sure that the only time you're really reinforcing this is if you were looking for it to happen. Otherwise, he might start to think, like I mentioned earlier, that cutting you off and going in front of your legs might be the right option. So right here, yes. So I'm going to, again, get him up and moving. So with the front, this is, again, he could be walking. Maybe all of a sudden there's a distraction up ahead, and I go front, and I bring him into the front of my body, and now my puppy is facing away from the thing. He's like, but that toy looks delicious. Ready? So the benefit of a front is that now you can redirect your puppy away from something. I would recommend, though, is practice these dance moves well before you ever need them. So if the only time you're working the skill is when like someone comes over or there's someone up ahead or there comes a dog distraction, is then a lot of the puppies then start to associate every time I do this skill, here comes that thing. And we don't want them to get overwhelmed and start getting flustered every time they think something's coming. So right there, yes. So I'm just going to feed him from moving into my space. So I know we mentioned also working a little bit with leash pressure. Leash pressure, for example, is something that I recommend folks to kind of get comfortable trying with their beauties. This does not mean it's a leash pop or correction. So I am not a fan of folks that when they're getting frustrated or don't understand how to help their puppy be successful, trying to teach the puppy what not to do, they yank on the gear to either scare or overwhelm them or hurt them in the learning process. So this will not be consistent of those leash jerks, yanking, popping, or even holding off the floor for your poor pupperoo, and that is not my thing. So when it comes to leash pressure, what this means is when he starts to feel that there's tension, it means come check in. So let's say, for example, he gets to the end of the leash and he's still pulling and we keep walking. Pulling equals keep going and exploring and having a great time. So for a lot of puppies by accident, pulling is being reinforced by mistake. So let's say, again, he's like, lady, I don't know if I can get up. So we'll get him up and wiggling for a second. So let's say, for example, you start him off similar to the front, but this would involve a little bit of connection. So try not to mix the two. Front, for example, is bringing your puppy into a front to do that lovely little check-in and sort of hone in on you. With leash pressure, I'm going to show you the beginning stage and then sort of what it can look like at the end as well. So in the beginning, I like to do a little pull and feed. So I'm not swiffering him across the floor. You should not be seeing change in your puppy's body language where they're getting overwhelmed or nervous. So I would do a little pull and feed. And again, a little pull and feed. He's like, I hear funny noises. And again, a little pull and feed. So what this is teaching him, almost like me tapping someone on the shoulder, and then I say, oh, you want the snack? He's like, I want this chew. So maybe while I'm blabbing for a second, he'll grab his little chew. You gonna grab it, sir? He's like, eventually. Ready? Okay, never mind. He says, I don't really want it. So if, let's say, you are always yanking back on your pup as you're walking forward, you're pretty much turning into the person that taps someone on the shoulder but never tells them what they want from them, and the person goes to ignore you or gets agitated. So with him, if I'm constantly yanking back and still moving forward, I'm teaching him to actually blow through his gear, and then that pressure equals ignore me and keep going. With my guys, when they feel pressure at the leash, they will then stop, turn, and pivot and head back towards me. So again, I do a little pull and I'm gonna feed. So what he's feeling is anytime he feels a little connection with the harness, like right here, a little pull and feed. He's being reinforced for feeling, so right here, a little pull and I feed. So then as you're practicing, you could then be walking, and let's say, for example, your puppy goes and pulls ahead because they're heading towards something. And of course, he may not do it right now because he's in lovely Snackville where he's like, I'd rather pay attention. But let's say, for example, your puppy goes to pull and they go way too far past you, and then they would feel that tension and then they could move into your space again. He's doing such a great job orbiting back to me that there is no pulling. But maybe, for example, he might go and notice the doorway or start pulling towards a distraction. And when he does, when he feels the tension, then you'd be looking for him to be like right here and then right there. So notice how when he, and I don't know if you saw him because of my camera, but what happened is he went and he walked, he then got to the end of the leash where he felt pressure, and then what I'm waiting for him to do is right there, yes, is when he checks back in after feeling that. So, but it's not me correcting, yanking, popping, or startling him. It just means that, sir, when you feel pressure, come back for a check-in. Ready? So, but we'll do a little bit with some of these practice moments. So we're going to go from doing some of these lovely loose leash walking moments, and then what we'll try is a little bit, ready, with a front behavior again. So from here, I might go ready, front, beautiful. And then if, let's say, your babe is doing a great job being in front of you, but now you want to keep walking and he's still kind of in the way, I recommend to sometimes, I know he was on my left, but you guys can do either side. I want to show you that when he's in the front position, you could then lure him and set him back up by your side again so you could continue on your merry way on that walk. Good job, sir. So the side or finish position is back by your leg, and then it kind of sets him up to continue on your merry way walking once more. So again, you go from there into a front, and then very nice, and then from there into bringing him back into your side. Good job. And these positions for now can all be standing. Later, as he gets more cozy or he gets more reliable with them, you could throw in sits or downs as well for some of your practice. But I'm going to give him a little break from some of this loose leash walking, and then we're going to work a little bit with maybe going to a spot and practicing a bit with our place or working a bit with settle on a mat. But he did a really good job with this loose leash walking. So I'll relinquish the wild man. He's like, let's just wrestle. So he can go ahead. We'll take a little breather, and then we'll do some of those other behaviors. So he did beautiful with that practice.